Good evening. I'm Anatoliana Chalisva, and this is Patriots Must Rise. We are a week in to the 2024 election being over. Kamala Harris being absolutely embarrassed with how many votes she didn't get. The fact that Donald Trump won both the Electoral College and the popular vote is a real embarrassment to the Democrats. But at the same time, why? Why the sudden change? Is it possible that the change was never there in the first place? That the 2020 election was rigged like Donald Trump actually said? Because that's what the numbers are showing. When you have in 2020 more than double the votes of what you've had in every year previous, and in 2024, somebody's got to start looking at the 2020 election a little bit closer. And they're starting to. Congress is looking into it, looking at Pelosi. Criminal charges might even come up. I hope they do. It would be nice for some of these assholes to actually get what they deserve. But part of the reason that 2020 happened and they got away with it for as long as they did was the fact that the mainstream press was so effective in their propaganda war against Donald Trump and against anybody that happened to be an American patriot and not a pro-globalist like the Democrats want you to be. If you actually think about it, what do Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump actually have in common? Now, I've had liberals tell me they're both evil men. You can say that, but you can't make it stick. An evil man doesn't buy a family a house because the house they were in burned down. Donald Trump did that in 2015 before he announced his presidency. An evil man doesn't build bomb shelters underneath Moscow for the entire community to use in the event of nuclear aggressions. And yet Vladimir Putin has been doing that ever since he was elected 30 years ago. But what does an evil man do? An evil man endorses men going into women's restrooms. pedophiles getting jobs as teachers under the guides of LBGTQ infinite letter friendly activism. I don't know. This is what Joe Biden did. An evil man joins the ranks of the Ku Klux Klan in 1972. Wears the robes proudly and takes pictures with David Blaine and David Duke. An evil man brags to the press only a week after he's elected to the Senate that he is corrupt, and that you should never assume that he's not a corrupt politician. That's what Joe Biden did in 1972. An evil man sets up laws in California to set up the African American community so they would be disproportionately incarcerated, and I can't talk, I am very sorry. That's what Kamala Harris did as the AG of California. Refusing to hear the pleas of an innocent man as new evidence comes up to prove his innocence. Because she doesn't have the time or doesn't think it's important enough to deal with. While the prisoner is a week away from death row. That's what Kamala Harris did in California. It's kind of interesting that we define evil as somebody that wants to put our country first and the globalist agenda second, that doesn't want people to have the ability to murder their own children or butcher them because of their woke agendas. And yet the two men that would actually stand up against this stuff are considered evil. The two men that actually consider themselves to be patriots in their own right are considered evil. While at the same time, the party of the Ku Klux Klan, the party that has more innocent deaths per capita in America, and we're not even at war officially with anybody, on their hands is considered the party of acceptance, hope, and change. Does anybody not find that to be absolutely ironic? Harris did not have a platform to be able to prove to America that she did a good job as vice president. She didn't have a platform because her vice presidency was attached to an absolute failure. So what we're seeing in America right now is a polar shift in our general politics. I'm actually hoping to see the death of the Democrat Party. Maybe the immersion of some kind of more libertarian party that will force the government to stay small. I believe that actually is the America First agenda. Sure, we'll have the rhinos, the Republicans in name only that are basically Democrats, but they'll be weeded out as we put in term limits in Congress and give them the perfect retirement plan as they hang from their necks as they deserve to. Because promoting a globalist agenda is treason. According to the Constitution as written in 1778. For foreign influence should never cross the borders of his country. Part of the issue with the press hating Donald Trump, other than the fact that they're being told to hate Donald Trump, is the fact that his first moves as president the first time around was to make us independent, to where we didn't actually have to trade with anybody. That's the way Russia's been doing business forever. They don't have to trade with anybody. They do if they want to, but they don't have to. They're not dependent on anybody. Oil reserves in both countries are adequate for the needs of the country. As it should be. We have no reason to believe that we're responsible for the welfare of the entire world. That's a Democrat agenda that basically was just designed to line the pockets of the corrupt and a synonym for corruption in this case happens to be the elite Democrats, the ones that have been elected into Congress and sitting there for the past 100 years. And nobody votes them out. the elections are tainted toward them, which is why we need term limits to keep the corruption down. And I do believe in a retirement plan. I do believe that the moment they leave Congress, them and their families should be hanging from a tree publicly, maybe honored with some kind of 20-gun salute. But let's make it a job that nobody wants. Let's eliminate financial compensation for anybody in Congress. If anybody comes in to lobby, they're automatically executed. That will get rid of the corruption. Automatically, if you're a lobbyist, doesn't matter. You're taken into a back room, lethal injection right there. If we go so far as to do that, we should probably break the unions, specifically the teachers' union. If you decide to lobby for anything, you find yourself in front of a needle, injecting borax and chlorine into your veins. This might be an extreme view of how the country might be run, but I believe that it would be a very efficient way to do it. Now, there is something that needs to be talked about with this election. There's a lot of very angry libbies that are crying in their soup, and they're not qualified to do any job other than a restaurant. So they're in a position to take revenge. This isn't going to be a peaceful transition to power at all. In fact, I was expecting riots as soon as the news got out that, at least on the surface, Donald Trump ran and won the election. There might have been some rioting in Seattle, Washington, but nothing in Portland, Oregon, which is really weird. I haven't heard of anything in San Francisco, which would have been the next hotspot. And it might be explainable, and I'll get into that later. But for now, take into account who might be serving your food if you go out to eat. If you go into a restaurant and any of the waitresses have blue hair, walk out. You're not safe. They will probably poison your food at this point. If the manager introduces himself and forces you to hear his pronouns, walk out. You're not safe. And that person shouldn't have been hired in the first place. So, yeah, just be very careful as the tension starts mounting. They're still counting the electoral votes, apparently, which I don't understand, because it should literally take a day after the election. And they'll push it out probably until the day that it's officiated. And there's still a risk of Kamala Harris not certifying the vote, which I see to be a very viable risk. Excuse me. But we also have a lot of undermined brainwashing, basically, that people need to get over. Because what we're seeing in the results of the election is, first of all, the libs were told that Donald Trump's a racist, he's a Nazi, blah blah blah, fill in the blank. You've all heard it before. Yet the Latino vote, the African American vote, and I'm only counting the males because who cares about the voice of a female? They're welfare whores. They're literally just voting so they can keep the welfare on the table, so they can open their legs, get another child, and get more money. That's not racist, that's just fact. Government in this country has been subsidizing single mothers basically since LBJ, and they get more points if they happen to be African American. That's the systematic racism that people talk about, but they don't want to actually flesh out, because it makes the Democrat Party look like the racist, which they are. All right. So you've got the Asian vote, the Hispanic vote, the African American vote, the Slavic vote, and then everybody in the Midwest, all going toward Trump. That turns their Donald Trump's a racist narrative into total bullshit. Then you have the fact that they worked so hard to impeach him, indict him. Everything that they did made him more popular, and everything that they did pointed in the Democrats' direction as, you're the tyrants. And people on the left don't seem to understand that. what got Donald Trump elected wasn't that Kamala Harris was a shitty vice president or a female, which are both very viable reasons not to vote for him. But it was the fact that the American people were tired of the bullshit that they were hearing from the press. They were tired of the bullshit that they were seeing in the grocery stores. The left would say that the inflation was from Donald Trump somehow, and they'd make up some excuse. But Joe Biden had already been in office for 3-4 years. We're still seeing the inflation rise. That's not a viable answer. This is the first election that I've seen in the 51 years that I've been alive that people have actually started voting with their head instead of their emotions. And if you look at the American map by county in how people voted, Kamala Harris didn't win any states. There were no blue states in this election. There were blue cities. There were blue counties. LA County was the only county in California that was actually blue, and there were pockets of red in that. Multnomah County, which is the Portland metro area in Portland, Oregon, was predominantly red, even though it's right smack in the middle of the most liberal city on the West Coast, second only to San Francisco and LA. King County, which encompasses, I believe, Seattle and Olympia in Washington, also was blue, but everything else was red. This was a historic election, not because it was a total upset and Donald Trump was only the second president to be elected twice non-consecutively. And I kind of wonder what the Democrats are going to pull away from this. What they can learn from this election. Because there was a lot of factors that went on in this particular election cycle. For a lot of people, the way 2022, the midterms went, where they were pushing Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday. June being a National Pride Month, and the pride flag being flown above the American flag on the White House. That should have angered every freaking American on the planet. And it should have also gotten Joe Biden impeached. Which, by the way, might actually be one of the reasons that they could impeach Kamala Harris. Because for the White House to actually endorse a flag that isn't even a sovereign nation on the same flagpole as the White House's American flag, that is treason. But there's a lot of debate about that. There's a lot about all of this that's up for subject to debate. And I hope people that actually have a say in it will say something. Because one thing that this election in 24 actually should have taught the Democrat Party, but I don't think they're going to listen, is parents value their children. And when you take the right of the parent away from the parent, just because of some political activism, they're going to fight back. And that's exactly what they did. In California, you can actually lose custody of your children if you don't support their desire to cut off their wiener. It's like, how does this discussion even start? Only 500 years ago, we would have just taken these people, and I use that term loosely, up to the top of a building, and just like they will in Iran, hold them by their feet and drop them head first into the rocks. I honestly believe that that's what we should be doing. That's what we should be doing with every pedophile. But, yeah. I just heard, and I'm not sure if it can be verified yet, that MSNBC, CNN, ABC, and a few others are actually firing their most recognized talking heads over how they handled Donald Trump over the past 8 years and forced the American people into voting for him. Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, several other notable figures will be pounding the pavement or going on LinkedIn that everybody ignores anyway to try to find a job. And they're not qualified to do anything. which is kind of funny. Anyway, I just thought that was worth putting into this particular segment. Okay. That's what I have for today. This is Patriots Must Rise. I am Anatoliana Chalisva, and please like, subscribe, live free, die well. And love your neighbor as Christ loved you. About this time, there's a QR code in the upper right-hand corner that leads to a gateway to donate to support this channel. We are completely crowdfunded, and your support will be appreciated. We do it this way so no sponsor can tell us what we're going to talk about. Alright, until next time.